Do you ever wonder what moment finally breaks a person? Is it the first lie you catch, or the last hope you lose? Thank you for being here tonight. Before I begin, may I ask, where are you listening from? And if it's not too personal, what time is it where you are? I like to imagine someone far away, sipping tea, maybe sitting by a quiet window, listening to a stranger's story that sounds a little too familiar. My name is Nia Kamau. I used to be someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's shadow. But somewhere between cooking dinners and folding regrets, I lost my name. I was 28 when I met David. He was charming, the kind of man who could turn an ordinary moment into a movie scene just by looking at you a certain way. I thought I had found a man who would build a home with me. Instead, I found a man who needed someone to decorate the walls of his ego. When we married, I promised him forever. He promised me everything, except peace. At first, life seemed simple. I woke up early, packed his lunch, kissed his forehead, and believed love was supposed to look like sacrifice. But the truth is, I was the only one sacrificing. David didn't like the way I cooked. The food was too bland, he'd say, or too salty, or too late. There was always something wrong, with the soup, with the rice, with the woman who made them. I remember one night so clearly it still smells like burnt stew in my memory. He came home late. I had been waiting for him. The table set, candles lit. I thought maybe for once he'd smile and say, "You didn't have to wait." But he didn't smile. He tasted the food, dropped the spoon and said, "How hard is it to get this right, Nia?" I told him softly, "I'll fix it. Give me a moment." And he shouted, louder than I'd ever heard him before, "You never get it right." The neighbors probably heard it too. And then before I could even blink, his hand met my cheek. It wasn't just the slap that hurt. It was the silence that followed, the kind where you realize no apology is coming. That night I didn't cry. I just stared at the kitchen wall until my reflection in the glass looked like someone else's ghost. The next morning, he kissed my forehead and said, "You made me angry, but you know I love you." And like a fool who confused pity with affection, I said, "I know." I told myself it would get better, but it didn't. Years passed like blurred pages, birthdays, arguments, quiet dinners. By the time I turned 35, I had stopped wearing bright colors. I cooked his favorite meals even when I hated the smell. I laughed at his jokes even when they cut me. People outside thought we were perfect. But perfection is often just silence, hiding bruises you can't see. Sometimes at night, I'd lie beside him and stare at the ceiling fan turning slow circles, wondering, if I disappeared tomorrow, would he even notice before dinner time? I wanted to leave many times, but I stayed. Because of love, I told myself. Because of vows. Because the world teaches women like me that endurance is a virtue. It isn't. Endurance without respect is a slow suicide. Then one evening, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic. No storm, no shouting, no slammed doors. Just a quiet knock on my own front door. I opened it, and there he was. David. And beside him stood a woman half my age, her hair gold and her smile practiced. She held his arm like she owned it. For a moment I thought maybe she was his colleague, or a distant cousin, or maybe I was dreaming. But David looked straight into my eyes and said, "Nia, this is Sophie. I married her last week." I felt my breath leave my body, not like shock, but like something sacred escaping. He continued, as if reading lines from a cruel script. "I can't live like this anymore. You and we've grown apart. You're different. You don't understand me anymore." He said it so calmly, like he was discussing a weather report. And then he added, almost casually, "Sophie makes me feel alive again. Alive." That word, alive. It sliced through me like cold glass. I stood there, gripping the edge of the door, afraid that if I let go, I'd fall through the floor. I remember Sophie saying softly, "I hope you understand. We didn't mean for it to happen." I wanted to scream, to break every plate in the kitchen. But instead I just said, "Of course." "You should go," he nodded. And just like that, he walked away with the woman who stole my husband and my past in the same breath. That night, the house felt too quiet. Even the clock seemed to tick slower, like it pitied me. I sat on the kitchen floor, the same floor where I used to kneel to clean spills, now slick with my tears. It was strange. I had feared losing him for years, but when I finally did, I felt something unexpected. Relief, not joy, not peace, just a heavy silence that said, "Now you can stop pretending." Days blurred into weeks. I stopped cooking, stopped dressing up, stopped speaking. My reflection looked like a stranger. Tired eyes, uncombed hair, a face that had forgotten how to be seen. One afternoon, I received a message from my old friend Mara Johnson. We hadn't spoken in years. She used to tell me, "You're too good at making excuses for people who don't deserve you." She asked if I'd join her for coffee. When I saw her, she hugged me tight, the kind of hug that says, "I know you're breaking, but I'll hold you till you remember you're human." We talked for hours. She told me about her work, how she'd started helping women rebuild their careers after divorce or job loss. And then she said something that changed me. "You've spent half your life building someone else's dream, Nia. Maybe it's time to build your own." That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed inside me like a heartbeat I'd forgotten I had. I sat at my old desk and started writing. Not letters, not diaries, just thoughts. Memories of what I'd done, what I'd lost, what I wanted. I realized I had never asked myself what I truly wanted. The next morning, I made a decision. Not a grand one, just a quiet, private promise. I will not waste what's left of me mourning what's gone. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. But pain has a strange way of sharpening your sight. You start seeing who you are beneath the ashes. I enrolled in an online course in career counseling. At first, I felt foolish, too old to start again, too tired to chase new dreams. But I kept going, one module at a time, one assignment at a time. Some days I'd look out the window and whisper to myself, "You're doing it. Nia, you're doing it." And maybe that's where this story really begins. Not when he left, but when I finally decided I wouldn't follow. Would you believe? It's been 7 years since that day. If you saw me now, you might not recognize me. I laugh louder. I eat alone without feeling lonely. I wake up excited about tomorrow, but that part comes later. For now, I'll leave you here, where a woman stands in the ruins of her old life, holding the first brick of her new one. And maybe that woman is me. Or maybe she's you. You know what's strange about starting over? It doesn't begin with fireworks or music. It begins in silence. Just you, your breath, and a question that whispers inside your bones. Now what? I remember waking up that first Monday after I'd finished my counseling course. There was no grand plan, just a small desk, a second-hand laptop, and a note I had taped on the wall. Listen deeply, guide gently. I decided to start offering free sessions online. Not because I had some grand business dream, but because I wanted to understand what people carried inside. I wanted to know if their pain sounded like mine. My first client was a young mother named Janelle. She'd been fired from her job after taking too many sick days to care for her baby. Her voice trembled through the screen when she said, "I feel useless. Like I'm just wasting air." Something in her words cracked open a door inside me, because I'd said that same line to myself years ago. So I told her softly, "Janelle, sometimes the world calls rest useless, but rest is where we learn to breathe again." She cried. I listened. When the session ended, I closed my laptop and sat there for a long time, realizing that maybe, just maybe, healing doesn't happen when you fix others. It happens when you start hearing yourself in their stories. That's how it began. One call at a time, one soul at a time, weeks turned into months. I began to see patterns. People chasing validation, drowning in shame, starving for peace. Different faces, same emptiness. And every time I helped someone find a little light, Mine grew a little brighter too. I moved from my small online corner to a real office, just a modest room with a potted plant and a window that caught the late afternoon sun. I'd sit there waiting for my clients, sipping coffee that had gone cold hours ago, thinking, maybe this is what purpose feels like. Quiet, steady, real. Sometimes, late in the evenings, I'd step outside and watch the world rush by. People talking, laughing, living. There was a time I thought I'd never feel part of that again. But slowly, I began to feel alive in my solitude. And yet, life has this funny way of testing the peace you think you've earned. It was a Thursday when my assistant, Erin, knocked on my door and said, "Miss Kamau, there's someone here to see you. No appointment." I nodded, expecting another walk-in client, maybe someone anxious or a young man needing career advice. But when the door opened, my breath froze. David. He stood there, older than I remembered. The lines on his face had deepened, his posture less proud. There was no ring on his finger. For a second, the room felt too small. Memories I thought I'd buried came flooding back. The smell of his cologne, the sound of that night when everything broke. He looked at me with a faint smile and said, "You look different, Nia." I didn't answer. I simply gestured to the chair across from me, the same chair where broken souls sat searching for clarity. He sat down slowly, eyes scanning the room like he was searching for something familiar. Finally, he spoke. "I heard about what you do, helping people. I'm proud of you." Proud. That word again, the one he never used when I was with him. I folded my hands and said quietly, "Why are you here, David?" He sighed, a sound somewhere between regret and exhaustion. "Sophie left 2 years ago. She said she wanted something different. I didn't react." He went on, "I thought I'd be angry, but mostly I'm just tired. I wanted to talk to someone who used to understand me." I looked at him for a long time, searching for the man I once loved, but all I saw was a stranger wearing his face. "David," I said, "I don't know if I ever understood you." "I think I only tried to." He looked down, fingers trembling. "You deserved better," he whispered. There it was, the apology I had waited a lifetime for. But it didn't hit the way I thought it would. There was no victory, no satisfaction, just a quiet understanding that closure isn't something you get from someone else. It's something you give yourself when you're ready to stop needing it. I leaned back and said gently, "I hope you find peace, David. Truly." He nodded, eyes wet. "You already did, didn't you?" And for the first time, I smiled, not out of pride but gratitude. "Yes," I said, but it wasn't easy. After he left, I sat there in silence, staring at the empty chair. I realized that every client who had sat there before him had prepared me for that moment, to face my past without collapsing under its weight. In the weeks that followed, something shifted in my sessions. I began to tell people, without naming names, about the woman who rebuilt herself after betrayal. How she learned that love is not proven by staying, but by surviving. They'd listen quietly, some crying, some nodding. I told one young girl who'd been cheated on, "You don't heal by forgetting. You heal by remembering without bleeding." Another time, an older man told me he couldn't forgive his wife for leaving him. I smiled gently and said, "Maybe forgiveness isn't about freeing her. Maybe it's about freeing yourself from the need to make her the villain." Every story taught me something new. About people, about loss, about the quiet dignity of moving forward. And somewhere along the way, I realized something. I had stopped looking backward. I started hosting small workshops, circles of women who had been through divorces, layoffs, heartbreaks. We'd sit in a cozy room, candles flickering, coffee brewing, and talk about the lives we were learning to love again. One evening, after a session, a young woman came up to me and said, "You talk about pain like it's something beautiful." I laughed softly and replied, "It's not beautiful. But it's honest, and honest things have their own kind of grace." Later that night, I walked home under a sky full of faint stars. The air smelled of rain and something new, possibility maybe. And as I walked, I thought about how far I'd come, from the woman who once begged for love to the woman who now teaches others that peace doesn't beg. It becomes. Sometimes I still catch my reflection in the mirror and wonder, what would that younger version of me think if she saw this woman now? Would she believe she made it this far? Maybe she wouldn't. But I think she'd be proud that I didn't let the story end with heartbreak. Because here's what I've learned. Pain isn't the enemy. Fear is. Fear keeps you in rooms where love has already left. Fear tells you that you're too old, too broken, too late. But life is patient. It waits quietly for you to return to yourself, and when you do, it doesn't ask what you've lost. It asks what you've learned. That's where I am now. Not at the end, but at the beginning of something real. I still have lonely days. I still get scared. But every morning I wake up with one unshakable truth. No one can replace you when you finally found yourself. If you're listening to this, maybe you're standing in the ashes of something too. If you are, don't rush the rebuilding. Let the silence teach you. Let the tears cleanse you. And when you're ready, take one small step, not toward who left, but toward who you're becoming. Because one day, someone might sit across from you, broken and hopeless, and you'll look at them and realize you've been here before. And this time, you'll know the way out. You know, people often ask me, "Nia, when did you finally heal?" And I tell them the truth. Healing isn't a single day. It's 1,000 quiet mornings when you choose not to go back to who you were. It's been 8 years since David walked out of my life. 8 years since I sat on that cold kitchen floor wondering if my world had ended. But the funny thing about endings is, they often hide beginnings in plain sight. My small counseling office had now grown into a center, a place where women and men came to rebuild what life had broken. We called it the Second Sunrise Project, because that's what it felt like, waking up again, even after the darkest night. We ran workshops, training sessions, and online programs that reached people far beyond what I had ever imagined. Every week I stood in front of a room full of strangers and told them the story of a woman who was replaced and how she replaced despair with purpose. Most never realized that woman was me. Then one afternoon I got a message from a well-known motivational platform. They invited me to give a talk at a public event. Thousands would be attending. My first instinct was fear. I wasn't a speaker. I was just a listener who had learned how to turn silence into strength. But Aaron, my assistant, said something that stuck with me. "You've spent years helping others find their voice. Nia, maybe it's time the world heard yours." So I agreed. The evening of the event arrived like a slow breath. Backstage, I could hear the low hum of the audience, laughter, footsteps, whispers, the buzz of anticipation. I looked at myself in the mirror. No fancy gown, no glitter, just a simple dress and a calmness that came from knowing I owed no one an apology anymore. When they called my name, the lights dimmed, and I walked to the stage. My heart beat steady, not with fear, but with gratitude. I began just as I always begin. Do you know what hurts more than being replaced? It's realizing you replaced yourself first, by forgetting who you were. The room fell silent. Thousands of faces, and yet I could feel each one of them breathing with me. I spoke about resilience, about betrayal, about rediscovering worth in solitude. And when I said, "You don't lose your value because someone stops seeing it. You lose it only when you stop believing it exists," the audience rose in applause. In that moment, I felt something deeper than pride. It was peace, the kind that comes when life finally returns what it once took away. After the talk, people lined up to meet me. Some hugged me, others simply whispered, "Thank you." But as I was about to leave, I saw a woman standing apart from the crowd. She looked hesitant, her eyes red, hands trembling. And then, as she stepped closer, my breath caught. Sophie. The same Sophie who had once stood beside David, smiling at me with pity and triumph. But the woman standing before me now, she looked nothing like that memory. Her hair was thinner, her shoulders curved with weariness. Life had done to her what betrayal does to everyone. It had humbled her. She said softly, "Nia, do you remember me?" For a second, I almost laughed, not from cruelty, but from the absurdity of time. Of course I remembered. There are some wounds you never forget. They just stop hurting. I nodded slowly. "Yes, Sophie, I remember," she exhaled, eyes filling up. "I don't even know why I came here. I saw your name online and I just had to. I needed to tell you something." I waited, silent. She continued, her voice breaking. "I thought I won. I thought taking him meant I'd found love. But David, he wasn't the man I imagined. He blamed me for everything, for his failures, his unhappiness. He made me feel small, just like—" She stopped mid-sentence, as if realizing she didn't need to say the rest. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "He left last year, for another woman, younger than me, and that's when I realized I was just a chapter in a story he never stopped rewriting." I listened quietly, the way I'd listened to so many others. Not as a victim, not as a rival, but as a woman who had already walked through that same fire. "I came to say I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't see you back then. I only saw what I wanted, but now I understand what I took." There was a long pause, the kind of silence where forgiveness and pain both wait for a place to rest. I could have said 1,000 things, could have reminded her of that day at my door, the smug smile, the ring glinting on her finger. But I didn't, because time had already punished her in ways I never could. So I said gently, "Sophie, life has a way of showing us everything we refuse to learn. What matters now is what you do with the lesson." She looked up, surprised. "You forgive me?" I smiled faintly. "Forgiveness isn't something I give you. It's something I gave myself a long time ago, when I stopped waiting for you to feel sorry." She nodded, tears still flowing. "You're stronger than I'll ever be." I shook my head. "No, Sophie. Strength isn't something you find. It's something you build when life leaves you no other choice." She hugged me then, tightly, trembling like someone letting go of years of guilt. And for the first time I felt nothing but compassion. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't watching karma strike. It's realizing you don't need revenge to heal. When she left, I stood alone for a while, staring at the empty hall. The same hall that had just echoed with applause now held the softer sound of closure. Months later, I received an email from an international publication. They wanted to feature my journey in their magazine, calling it "From Broken to Becoming." The title made me smile, because that's what this was, not a comeback story, but a becoming story. The article went viral. My inbox flooded with messages from people, women, men, even teenagers, saying, "You told my story." One message said, "Your words saved me from ending my life." I read that one 3 times and cried, because it hit me. Maybe every pain I endured had a purpose bigger than me. Maybe my suffering was never punishment. Maybe it was preparation. Over time, the center grew into a full foundation, Kamau Institute for Emotional Renewal. I trained others to become counselors. I traveled, I spoke, I lived. But no matter where I went, I always began my talks the same way. "Before I tell you my story, tell me, where are you from and what time is it where you are?" Because pain doesn't live in one country, one accent, one culture. It lives wherever people love too much and lose too quietly. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I sat alone in my kitchen, the same place where, years ago, I had once cried for hours. Now it smelled of jasmine tea instead of despair. I opened my window, and the city lights glowed softly like scattered candles. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It read, "Hi Nia, it's David. I saw your interview today. You've done well for yourself." I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. So many memories tried to rise, but none could reach the surface. Finally, I typed just one sentence, "Thank you. I hope you find peace," and I meant it, because the past no longer owned me. I put the phone down, exhaled deeply, and smiled to myself. Outside, a soft rain began to fall, gentle, cleansing, familiar, and I thought maybe this is what grace feels like, when you can remember everything and still wish them well. I don't tell this story because I want sympathy. I tell it because someone listening tonight might be standing where I once stood, at the edge of an ending, terrified to move. If that's you, listen to me carefully. You will be okay. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday, you'll wake up and realize the storm that broke you was also clearing your path. Don't chase what left you. Don't shrink to fit the love that couldn't hold you. And don't forget, you are not replaceable just because someone couldn't see your worth. Love will find you again, not the kind that demands, but the kind that respects your silence, your scars, your strength. And when it does, you'll recognize it not because it feels familiar, but because it feels safe. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you for listening, wherever you are, whatever time it is. I hope my story reminds you that even broken hearts still beat beautifully, and that sometimes being replaced is the best way life makes room for who you were always meant to become. Because in the end, fate didn't replace me. It revealed me.